this. Okay, so this class tonight, like everything else in Bereshit, is just jam packed. The parsha is jam packed, and we're gonna try to make a theme, a congruent theme here throughout the parsha. And I think we have something. This is where we see Eisav and Yaakov meet up in this parsha, VaYishlach, after many years of not seeing each other, and we know the story. Yaakov was very nervous about meeting Eisav, and he tries three things. He he tries to appease him. He's ready for war. It's very famous. It's in the Pesukim, and he ultimately does tefillah. And we see that at the end of the day, the power of tefillah, in the beginning, sets up the stage for the rest of the, for this meeting. And we also see a lot, like all the avot aren't perfect. That's what makes Torah different than anything else. Anything, in the sense that the avot aren't these like godlike beings. They're people that struggle, and their paradigms and their archetypes of our own lives. And that Yaakov's challenge is in his head. Yeah, like that's basically what tefillah does. It clears up your head. It makes you so connected to Kodesh Baruch Hu that the emunah and bitachon that you need to make it through the world, it's given to you. And we see he had nothing to worry about the whole time. Nothing to worry about the entire time. In fact, the thing he had to worry about after this is whether he decides to go with Eisav or not. And Esav's nice, Hey, he's got IKEAs and Amazons and all sorts of fun stuff. Unrecyclable styrofoam shipping containers, all sorts of fun things that people and endless smartphones, entertainment, free entertainment, Netflix. It's all there for Eisav. That's Har Seir. Har Seir is at the place where you're Moshe. It says in Devarim, right? We've circled around the mountain Har Seir. They're circling on Har Seir. The famous line: "We've circled around the mountain long enough. Let's go to Eretz Israel." And that's galut. That's exile. That's the exile of the soul. We're sort of saying here, okay, how long can we possibly do this game for, Hashem? Let me get home in here and home in the reality, physical place. It's all interconnected, as we've discussed. And Yaakov's really struggle here is it's he thinks he can defeat him with these other games, and like I said, it's really tefillah which clarifies his emunah bitachon, and that's how you deal with Malchut Eisav. Because without that, we're just gonna get pulled down the Har Seir. Why not go with him? Why not go with him? And that's the tefillah. Save me from my brothers from Eisav. That's the famous tefillah. Achiva Eisav, right? Eisav Achi. Yeah. The Achi part's always seen as there's Eisav the bad dude, and there's Achi, what happens to these nice? What's Donald Trump's in office? Does that mean we change our tune? That's what happens there. And that's always been the test of Am Yisrael in the right. Hatzileni na miad achi miad Eisav. That's the famous line. Save me from the hand of my brother and from the hand of Eisav. And we understand it's always read like two different people. There's sometimes Eisav is against us, and that's the bracha he's given by Yitzhak, right? When your brother's not supposed to do, it doesn't do what he's supposed to do, whack him. When your brother but why does your brother does what he's supposed to do? Then he's achi again. Come sit here, hang out. Let's hang out. And it's set up because Yaakov says, "Garti, right? I lived all these years with Lavan, and Garti is the gematria of, we don't always have to quote gematria, but this is a famous gematria. I believe Rashi brings it already in, and that means Rashi's bringing it in from the oral Torah, from the Mesorah. Garti is 613. I have all my 613 mitzvot. So he's not fighting him on the level of Eisav anymore. Now it's Achi time. Do I get pulled down to Seir? Do I get pulled down to the world of of the abyss, of the tumah, of all these things that are like not what we need to be doing, or not. And the tefillah has this double-edged sword.
So that gematria, is that why Eisav says Yeshli Rav and Yaakov says Yeshli Kol?
We're gonna get,
everything, right?
we're gonna actually drill deeper into that. I'm glad you picked that up. That psuk is exactly where I want to go. That's actually a huge part of this parsha, at least the Eisav scene, is that line back and forth, and it plays into this. Do I stay? Yaakov eventually goes to Sukkot, and that's this diametrically opposite land. There's the Shekhinah versus Seir, which is really the land of the Idumim. It's like a very physical sort of place, and so, but that line Yeshli Rav can be read in both ways. Rabbi Nachman brings this in is a very important. I'm glad you brought that up. So it's a huge pasuk. It's like a lot to unpack there. Before I get there, I want to understand, or put forth a concept that we understand. Like a lot of the Torah, we understand, we discuss this really within us. Now, it's obviously physical. Obviously, there's a covenant. Obviously, we have to come to Eretz Yisrael, but it's really within us. We discussed that before. Like, it's all these archetypes of people are happening inside of our psychology, our psyche, and so. I'm using a modern word of archetype versus what we could be using mystical terms, and it's good to bring it down in terms of a psychological sort of expression. We've been trying to do that lately, and there's a reason why Rabbi Nachman starts off Likutei Moharan with the Torah we've discussed so many times, whereas like Yaakov versus Eisav being the kingdom which is not attached to the light, which is a kingdom of Tzimtzum or a non-expansive kingdom. Let's just say that's what it means. The evil kingdom just means I can't see where Hashem is in the world. Where we know Yaakov can see all these different points of Hashem in the world. And let's translate that slightly different. Eisav is a fixed mindset person, right? And Yaakov is a growth-minded person, right? And Eretz Yisrael is a growth-minded place. Because we know Rabbi Nachman says in Ish Yisrael, he says that a person has to grow higher and higher and higher. That's the purpose of this world. That's why we're here. To go from a low place to a high place, to go from a place of physical concerns and needs to a place of self-actualization. That's all the Torah is about. When we break it down, that's what it is. Going from a physical world to a self-actualized reality or transcendent reality. That's it. That's the whole thing. All the mitzvot are designed for us as an individual and a nation to move from a physical experience to a complete, expansive, growth-minded, transcendent experience. In a nutshell, I think that's what it's about. And so Esav's constant roles, because he's a fixed-minded person, which means he doesn't see the big picture. He doesn't want to break out of the shell he's in. We've all encountered these people, right? And they try to bring everybody else down with them because they're like, listen, I can't see what you see because I don't want to grow anymore. And this becomes extremely, we begin to fit into the pasuk that Terry, you brought up. You can read Yeshli Rav in many, many ways. You can say, yeah, I have a lot of things. That's usually the Pasha Pshat. I have a lot of things. Plenty. And Yaakov says, I have everything. Now let's unpack that for a second, because we're going to get to what Rabbi Nachman wants to read it as. It doesn't mean Rabbi Nachman rereads a psuk. It does not override the Pashat version of it. Simple version of it. It just means there might be something more going on here to understand our psychological makeup than what meets the eye. It's very clear when Hasidut does what he does. Not always, but usually, it doesn't reinterpret the simple meaning. It's important to understand that. Because Rambam used to argue against it. Wasn't the way before Hasidut, but there was a line of reasoning in the time of the Rambam that interpreted all of the Torah as more of a spiritual ideas. So Rambam argue against that. There was actually a huge growing current back then, and so the reason why he really stayed with more nevuchim and a lot of rationalism is not because he felt that's all there was. He wanted to push back on that sort of current that was going on. It's pre-Kabbalah, pre all the Arizal. And he felt that was, and he's rightfully so, that you can't override the simple meaning of the Torah. Chassidut doesn't do that. It's just giving us a deeper understanding how we can use it in our inner psychological development. Okay. So yeah, yesh li rav, yesh li kol. What is Eisav's primary goal in this world? He doesn't care about the next world. He only cares about this world. This is his whole raising the antras this world. He doesn't care if he trashes the world. He doesn't care what goes on. Because I live for now. Just now. And we're not talking about some mindfulness idea where it only right now matters. No, he means right now. I mean, only, I don't care. I just want to satiate myself. And when Yaakov says yesh li kol, it means there's also, like Rabbi Nachman says, I have a zikaron, I have a memory, I remember what the world's really about. Therefore, I can detach from this world, and because there's olam haba from this. Yesh li kol, there's everything. This is only a means, a prose, or a walkway to the next world. A means to uplift all that I'm trying to do. That's what the purpose of this world is. And Yaakov understood that. Ishtam, right? He gets it. And he says, no, usually Rav, I have a lot of things. I'm doing good, man. That's the simple way of reading it. Right? I'm cool, whatever, right? Sameach b'chelko. I have gratitude, whatever I have. That's the famous line I've talked about. That's real simple. Simple as whatever happens, I'm happy. That's Yaakov. And Yaakov really, always gets put through the ringer. I didn't have an easy life. Yeah, he's okay. So Rabbi Nachman takes a different step deeper, and I think they're interconnected. The simple meaning and what Rabbi Nachman brings in yesh li rav. Eisav goes yesh li rav. What's going on here? No, there's a rav, a rabbi, a rav to Eisav. He says, I have a rav. What's the rav of Eisav? It's there's two types of Torahs in the world. There's the Torah of light and the Torah of darkness. I'm going to keep bringing it down a little bit here, not going too deep. There's the Torah of light and the Torah of the darkness. They're the same Torah. It's just who's the person, the vessel that's taking the Torah and passing it off to somebody else. Yesh li Rav. I have a Rav. He understands it differently than you do. I mean, the purpose of the world is to amass lots of things. I learned the Torah out to teach me how to take advantage of things, how to amass something. That my satiation for wealth can never be complete. All the Western world is Eisav. And all it cares about, as we see now, is this corporate everything, corporate pharmacy, corporate tech, big tech. It's all about amassing wealth. Yesh li Rav. There is a lot of things to do. Because my Rav tells me that's the purpose of the world. And the way he learns out Torah, so Eisav speaking, is that's the purpose. Right? And we see this, the progeny of Eisav is Amalek and Haman. And that's the whole point. There is no real, for Amalek, there is no interwoven, holistic, expansive system. It's just here and now, whatever I can get. That's why when they attack, what do they do when they attack David in Siklag? They attack David's camp. They just take things. they're just marauding around taking things. It's not theirs, right? They're not actually trying to fight a war to win anything. They're just taking things. They're like thieves in the middle of the night, just taking stuff. And so David's like, I can't have this. He just kills them all. Because there's a difference in fighting a war with another nation. There's no purpose for what they're doing. Yesh li Rav. I have lots of things. The purpose of the world for Eisav is always just to take things, always just to build up wealth. Create rackets and rackets and rackets for pharmaceuticals and injections and stuff we've gone through before. That's the whole point, because we can't see there's any other purpose. Once again, Eisav is fixed mindset. Yesh li Rav. What you see is what you have. There's nothing else to this world. And Yaakov is growth minded, especially when his name is Israel later on. That means he's really, moving towards an expansive mindset. Darga to level to level. Eisav doesn't care about that at all. Eisav's not an Ish Yisraeli. Eisav's not an Israelite. He's not trying to move up level to level. It's just what he has is what he is now.
Would you say that Yitzhak was closed-minded versus growth-minded, and Yaakov brought that to the patriarchs?
It's all relative, right? So obviously Yitzhak versus Ishmael is growth-minded versus fixed mindset. But you're right. There's a certain din quality to a restricted quality to Yitzhak that's pretty well known. And Rivka is the expansive mindset. Like, you always have these relationships, but when it's all relative, right? So Yitzhak versus Ishmael is the growth versus fixed. But when it comes to that relationship, that marriage, Rivka is for sure growth-minded. She sees the bigger picture. She's trying to help move everybody up a level. Whereas Yitzhak says, listen, I'd rather put my trust in Eisav, even if I don't know if it's really the right thing to do, because that's the paradigm I'm used to as a father. Where it gets complicated is the 12 tribes. Like, who really has the growth mindset there? And what makes, we'll learn what makes Judah and Yosef's relationship so powerful is that Yosef is always growth minded. We see it. He's always growth minded. Where Yehuda has to, in order for Yehuda to get there, he has to truly has to fall first. That's we'll get to that, but I think a lot of this can be broken down to a growth minded, fixed minded paradigm, especially Eisav and Yaakov. And we see how, he comes to 400 men. Right? Who else had 400 men? Dude.
How many did Abraham take to fight the
300. 300 and David. So and they're both redheads, Eisav and David, which is why people freaked out. This is a here we go again type thing. But we see that David is the tikkun for Eisav. He's the rectification of Eisav. Eisav being this, he uplifts the whole thing. He's the exact opposite of Eisav. There's nobody more growth-minded than King David in the entire Bible. And so he sort of fixes the entire. He becomes the fourth wheel, of the chariot. Right? There's the three avot, and there's King David. But it was supposed to be for Eisav, by the way. If it was a perfect world, Eisav and Yaakov should have been working together. Eisav in the physical and Yaakov in the spiritual, which is what Yitzhak thought. That they would be the two wheels. They'd complete the whole. There'd be four altogether. So it took King David to fix that. We see Yaakov. It's very just as a side point. There's an amazing exchange here, where you have the two imahot, two mothers, Leah and Rachel, and how the children relate to each one of them. It's a very quick line, right? Eisav comes to Leah, sees the children behind her, and bows. And where has the Rachel? Yosef's in front of Rachel, defending her from Eisav. There's two ways to look at it. I never thought about it this way. Of last week's parsha, but someone last night told me it's an amazing Hiddush that Leah's entire life is about her children. So she's protecting her children. Versus Rachel, who is not the position of Yosef, but Leah's entire relationship it's not from me, from somebody else. Leah's entire relationship to Yaakov really is about her children. So she's protecting her children. And we see that paradigm of growth and fixed there as well, in many ways. That Leah stepped out of her, Leah was not even meant for Yaakov. And she kind of built herself up into this person who was able to take that role on and grow and grow and grow, where Rachel really stayed within her role of the perfect daughter, the beautiful daughter, so you see this relationship as well.
Also kept the ice.
Yeah, well, we don't know that, if we put Midrashim aside, she did save her father, but we don't know what's going on there. It is very odd. Why didn't you just destroy them? Like, what do you have to keep them for? I mean, I can figure out a lot of ideas there. There's also part of us that keeps these things going as well. That keeps these sort of addictions going. all sort of addiction to this world is idol worship to a certain extent. Which is why the emphasis on zikaron and memory is so important, because remembering what it's all about gets you moving up the ladder. It gets you moving away from Esav's realm. That's the trigger, right? Zikaron Olam Haba. Rabbi Nachman says that. It sounds like, oh, come on, really? Like, I have to remember Olam Haba. He's saying, no, remember the fact that you have to grow beyond where you're at. That's what it really means there. But you can't remember Olam Haba. It would be like, woo, all the time. We wouldn't be able to be in this world. But he really means, like, remember to grow. Because we see, if not, you get pulled back in. You get pulled back in. Two more main points about this in this area. And he says, before part of the prayer he says, at one point he says, "Vayomer Yaakov Elokai Avi Abraham Elokai Avi Yitzhak Hashem Haomer Elai Shuv LaArtzacha Modecha Metiva Imach." Right? He's saying, like, he's reaching out to Hashem, the God who sent me back. But he says, very, so interesting. Like, every time there's a problem, they always say, God of my father Abraham, and God of my father Yitzhak. It's just like when we have it, it's like, once again, this idea of breaking past the paradigm that we're used to. How do we do that? We go back to the people who did it first. Abraham in his own way, we broke the idols. Yitzhak in many ways, the fact he was willing to self-sacrifice himself, I mean, okay, that's obviously knew what was going on. He's already older, so he was able to be, hey, listen, if this is what Hashem wants you to do with me, then fine. And there's a powerful idea there as well. And the idea that he's going out to the fields and davening for his zivug, and it's supposed to be the paradigm of all relationships. And so each one of them brings this kind of new standard to the world. And Yaakov says, look, listen, the only way I've been able to handle Eisav is if I tap back into that. Just a point I wanted to, it's once again always going back to this idea of growth, always going to this idea that this is what this world is about, not all these types of things we're fed right now. Mass media, all sorts of antidepressants, money, all this sort of stuff is just a distraction to bring us to the galut. And Eisav goes on his way. Eisav goes to his world, which is the same world, the world vision he has. And this goes back to, we've seen this exchange sons, the idea of the exchange sons. We've seen it over and over again. That really there's these two modalities in the world. And he wants to, be a slave. What does the slave boy in the exchange sons really mean? It could be our body, and the king there is our mind, our soul. That's one way of looking at it. But there's also a type of personalities in the world. There's a person who wants to be a slave to everything, who wants to give himself over to the physical world, wants him to do like an animal. And there's the king of that story, the real king, who's in charge of the world and uplifts it by recalibrating and find a holistic, the holistic message to everything, which is our job to do. And that's what we see here. Yaakov goes on and moves to Sukkot. And Sukkot's a key word here. The Sukkot is about Shekhinah. It's a divine presence. And that's the paradigm.
So when they initially split, Yaakov tells Eisav that you go on ahead, the babies are too young and whatever, we'll catch up and we'll come. So is he deceiving him, or does he, at that point, he hasn't made his decision?
That's a very good question. It's a very, very good question. I don't think it's answerable. We can delve into that. That once again is our own psyche in this world. There's part of us that wants to move on. There's part of us that doesn't. We see this over and over again in our own lives, right? There's a part of us that says, hey, listen, I'm going to detach. I'm going to, today is today and yesterday is yesterday. And I'll let it go. Like, I'll let the physical world that's been holding me down go. I mean, the Yetzer Hara, which is just my bad thoughts, I'll let them just all go. There's that part of it where the tree forest man says to the real king, just let them all go. And that's what we assume, that Yaakov's just deceiving him. Hey, listen, it's all good. We're moving on. This is just a shtick. But I don't know.
Because he doesn't know his son's changed.
But remember, Eisav, even if Esav's changed, it's a problem. Eisav has no chelik in Olam Haba. He doesn't. That's true. That's true. That's true. But there's this subtle sort of idea that this goes to the subtle fascism that's going on right now. I need the state. Don't know. Or do I need Hashem? I mean, Eisav also represents that. This false sense of security. Because Esav's strong, he's tough, he's got everything down. Yeshli Rav. I have a lot of things. I got nuclear weapons. Right? I got lasers and satellite dishes, and I'll take care of you, Israel. I'll take care of you. You don't need prayer. So Yaakov ready for it? Does Yaakov still need that? Or will Yaakov just go to Sukkot and stay there? I mean, stay in the idea of I'm breaking through now and I just need prayer. That's really what you're asking, right? Is there a part of him that hasn't? I think it's a great question because plays really deep in this issue that he's we see Yaakov have, and maybe this what we're about to talk about, the ending here, or the ending of part of the ending of the story, really is that Yaakov might not have ever gotten there, or it was clarified, and I think we have a proof of that, right? What happens? Dinah goes out walking in Shechem. The Hebrew here is really not. I just like it's intense, And just think about Leah's perspective on this. We just went through Leah loves her children. That's what makes her connected to Yaakov. And then what happens to Dinah is just like unreal. There's two ways to read it. There's ways she was really raped, or that she went willingly because she thought that was what she was supposed to do, like get married to this guy. Either way, there seems to be an issue going on here. Tete Dina bat Leah, Asher Yalda, Yaakov, Leot. She's bat Dina, she's not bat Yaakov. It's bat Leah. It shows the bond that they must have some serious bondage there. She wants to hang out with the girls. Shechem sees her, Shechem ben Hamor takes her, does what he does with her. And then we have this crazy situation. Right? The Yaakov cuts a deal with these guys. The guys in Shechem. And they actually do Brit Milah. And then Shimon Levi whack them. Just whack them. Wipe out the whole, boom, Rambo style. And, it's important to understand this pasuk because I think answers up your question about exactly what's going on in Yaakov's mind and why the Gula has to wait in many ways. And he says, this is, he says, what have you done? Basically, what you guys have done, you wiped out entirely. We're not supposed to be doing this stuff. And they said, Vayomru, they said, it's a great line. Ha kizona ya'aseh et achotenu. They made our sister into a prostitute. He doesn't answer back. It's there's two ways to look at this. Either he agrees with them, or he has no real answer. And I think it's the latter. Meaning, he doesn't agree with them because he would have done it himself. He was seeing clearly, no, he's Yaakov here. He's not yet Israel here. He still, there's a part of him that still feels that maybe I should be with Eisav. Maybe I do need these nuclear bombers and Biden to sign off on some deal for us. I'm just, we can always take all this right in the Torah and bring it right now. It's the same thing. Am I going to be Yaakov with Eisav, or am I going to be Yisrael? Yisrael goes, Rabbi Nachman doesn't say Yaakov goes with Darga. He says Ish Yisraeli, someone who's become a Darga of Yisrael. Shimon Levi, we always talk about fixed versus, right, fixed is growth. In this paradigm, Yaakov is still the fixed mindset, because what's fixed in growth? It's just, am I ready to change or not? So here he's not ready to change. Here he might be still stuck with Eisav, wishing he was down a Har Seir. Because why wouldn't you wipe them out? And here's the proof that Shimon Levi might have done the right thing. He says, it says Achidina, the brothers of Dinah. Now, and there's many different ways to read this, because it's not gematria, it's notrikon. Notrikon is taking letters of two or three different things and taking the main letters out and finding another word in there. Achidina, if you take Aleph, Chet, and Daled from the words Echad, there's a subtle message the Torah is trying to tell us. That their achdut, their unification of purpose for retribution, showed Hashem's oneness in the world as a way to read it, which is why Yaakov did not answer when they said Kizona they made our sister into a prostitute. They have no answer, because it wasn't. They didn't go there to go like, hey, I'm having some fun today. I'm getting some action out of watching these guys. No, this Brit doesn't count. Because what's more important is kavod to Hashem. And if somebody from Am Yisrael gets whacked, that's it. We're going all out. 2 against the whole village. Yeah. See, Yaakov is like, he's not ready for the whole thing. We see this over and over again. He's not ready for Geula. It's true. The paradigm that we were given is Yaakov versus Eisav. There's this growth versus fixed. But when it goes the whole way, he's not ready. He's not yet there. Only the children are. Only the children. That's life in general. The children, the youth, always bring it to the next level. Youth always bring. We're going to see that in the beginning of next week's parsha. How Yosef's like the whole deal. Yosef's the culmination. What Yaakov would have been, but Yaakov gave it to Yosef. But here we see it. Here we see the fact that the children understand that the kavod of Hashem here is the ultimate purpose in the whole world. The whole purpose of the world is kavod Hashem. Kavod Hashem is about I grow darga to darga, grow level to level. Yaakov was willing to do some of it. He didn't go to Seir. He could have done that right away. He holds off because he sees it's not healthy. But his children say, I don't need Seir at all. I don't need Eisav at all. Just 2 of us on everybody. Boom. And he doesn't answer back because they're right. So we all should be zocha to not only, to always live in a growth mindset, constantly grow, like Rabbi Nachman says, darga to darga, level to level. Every level there's a cognitive distortion, break through it, just break through until we get to a level of transcendence. Especially in Eretz Yisrael, where the rules of the game here are not like they're outside Eretz Yisrael. Here's full emunah, full bitachon. It's our land, not their land, right? No senile president can tell us what to do. It's all good, right? And that goes to the Corona Welt as well. We don't really need their stuff, their poison, because at the end of the day, like, it's Reb Hashem, who lives and who dies and who makes sick, as long as we take care of ourselves in a normal way. And we shall be zochah have full moon and bitachon and always be growing, never be stuck.